I imagine most of you were living your life in ignorant bliss, not even knowing there was a new Hellboy movie coming out. About 2 months ago, they released a trailer for Hellboy the Crooked Man, and for maybe like 12 hours, people collectively clowned on it because it looked like trash. Anyway, though, most people forgot all about it. I didn't. I paid attention. About 2 weeks ago, they also announced that they weren't even going to bother throwing this puppy into movie theaters. It was just going straight to streaming, which doesn't showcase a lot of faith in Hellboy the Crooked Man here from the higher-ups. They just condemned it straight to the VHS bin at Blockbuster. I love Hellboy. The Guillermo del Toro movies, I think, are amazing, and I was one of the few delusional souls that found enjoyment out of the Hellboy reboot a few years ago. I recognize that it's an objectively horrible film, but tell that to my heart, which was smiling watching it because it was so entertainingly shit. Especially the ending. I actually talk about the ending quite a bit on stream. I still think that is one of the most shocking, out of nowhere, but beautiful endings ever. Basically, hell gets opened on Earth, and they have these really cool demon designs that come out that I've never seen on the big screen, and they just start like flaying people alive. They start killing people in really fucking gory, creative ways. It was unexpected and really cool to see. But the movie's bad, I know that. It's still fun. But anyway, I paid attention to the Crooked Man here because I was going to watch it no matter what. And I don't want the title to mislead anyone here. It's not a good movie, but it's not as dog shitty as I was expecting it to be. So clearly this film is working on a lower budget here, which I never mind. Like I said, I think low budget films are the future. Every movie needing $100 million plus budget is absurdity, and some of my favorite films are the ones that are made on shoestring budgets. Even though this budget is like 20 million, I wouldn't even really call that shoestring, but comparatively to like everything else that comes out, that is teeny tiny. That is tiddlywinks of dollars to work with. Godzilla Minus One made it work, though, with a $15 million budget, and that was my favorite movie of 2023. That movie is a fucking masterpiece. Hellboy the Crooked Man is not. I'm not trying to compare it to Godzilla Minus One or anything. I'm just saying the budget, I don't think, is the biggest issue with the film. And I actually think they used their budget pretty well. Stylistically, I think the film looks good. I think they chose a good style to go with, and they recognize shortcomings with like CGI and stuff, so they don't bother to try and show you something that looks shitty for CGI. They will instead, like when someone's transforming, instead of showing them going through it, they'll cut away and they've already transformed. It's better than giving you some kind of lazy Nintendo 64 looking thing of them transforming. That's smart. And they do that for some of the action as well. And action doesn't happen much in this movie at all. This is not the Hellboy I've ever seen before. Apparently this is more true to the comic books where he's more of a detective as opposed to like a badass fighter. And I don't really like that. I'll just go ahead and tell you right now, I thought it was lame. Hellboy doesn't do much. Like, even as an investigator, he doesn't do much. He just says, oh crap, a lot. And then at one point, he starts hitting a few zombies with a shovel. And he like grabbed the snake once and popped its head after getting bit by it like 8 times. And after getting suplexed by this like normal sized snake like 8 times. So I was really unimpressed with Hellboy's ability to handle himself and take care of situations. It wasn't really Hellboy versus the Crooked Man. It was more like this geriatric old man choking on a fur ball and then Hellboy shooting him. I'm getting into spoilers here, obviously, but it's just kind of underwhelming in that department. Now, if you're like a huge fan of the comic books and prefer a more passive Hellboy, then maybe this is more up your alley, but for me, I'd become accustomed to how he'd been portrayed in the previous films, so I didn't really like this version of him very much. I think the actor did a decent job, though, playing Hellboy. You're never going to live up to Ron Perlman or anything, but I thought he was fine. I really did. And I kind of went off on a tangent here, getting into other things, but what I was talking about with the style is I do think they used their budget well. Like, the locations are small, contained, so it's not like huge scale or anything. And I actually prefer that everything's not on this like world-ending scale. I like this more localized story. Basically, they had this spider that they were transporting. Shit gets cattywampus. The spider breaks free. They fall off of a train, and now they're in the weird hills here that have some spooky stuff going on with some witches and the Crooked Man. So it's very small, like it's contained, and I appreciate that. I do want to mention that even though they, for the most part, do a good job of not just showing you bad CGI, there are moments where there is bad CGI because, I mean, for a film like this, there is going to be CGI moments, and yikes, sports fans, I gotta tell you, sometimes it does not look good. For example, there is a witch. Since I'm already getting into spoilers, I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you who the witch is. I've been getting into spoilers when going over these things, but I'll just keep giving you warnings. This is a huge spoiler for this, so if you plan on watching this movie, just know I'm about to spoil something big for you. Hellboy's mom plays a role in this, and she's a witch. And Hellboy keeps getting transported to the fucking Upside Down, where he's witnessing his mother being like tortured for sins that she has committed and forced to bear this child, Hellboy. And she is burning. And Hellboy watches her burn, and it looks awful. Like, not like painful or anything, I'm sure it is, but like visually, I thought for a second I wasn't even watching a movie anymore. I was watching like previs. It actually looks like they took the actress and then slapped like fire JPEG images they found on Google and slightly animated it on top of her. It was bad. Again, though, overall, I do feel they did a good job of avoiding like bad CGI moments, and overall, I do think the movie looks good visually. It also goes for a horror approach as opposed to what I would expect from a Hellboy film, which is more like action-oriented and all of that. The film really wants to be unnerving, creepy, spooky. Like, they have the ominous music that you hear in every horror movie ever made. It has very standard horror movie moments. It doesn't really have any jump scares, at least not that I recognized as a jump scare attempt, but it's very clear it wants to be a horror film, at least a large part of it. I do not think it does the horror very well, mainly because it is the most cliche horror that it weaves in here. There's nothing new or exciting about the attempt it makes at making horror moments work. It's all very standard tropes we've seen from every other horror movie ever. But maybe that'll be appealing to some people that would like to see horror integrated with a Hellboy movie. For me, I think that was a miss, though. For me, that wasn't hitting. Like, the first half of the film, we're getting acclimated to this environment with people that understand that witches are around. So, like, Hellboy and his sidekick, her name is Jo. She's like a researcher and like an assistant. She's just here like getting some field work because she's really excited about that and wants like hands-on research. Anyway, they go to this like house that they stumble across. So they go into this house and there's like a boy lying on the floor paralyzed. And Hellboy's like, what's going on with him? And they're like, oh yeah, we've been witched by Cora Fisher. He cursed by Cora Fisher, a witch, and now he's like that. And Hellboy's like, okay, so are you okay with him being turned into a rug like this? They don't really answer. He's like, I was a witch with Cora Fisher. And then a guy named Tom comes in, and he's fucking omniscient. He, like, knows everything about everything here. So he comes in, and he's got, like, this little ball of poop. And he tosses it to Hellboy, and he calls it a witch ball. He's like, oh, it's a witch ball. And Hellboy's like, damn, don't like witch balls. I guess. No explanation for like what witch balls are, but then it cuts to like this weird scene that I don't understand the purpose of. I wrote it down because I was so stunned by it. So like after this and like a little bit of background on Cora Fisher the witch and her relationship to Tom, it cuts to this part where there's this lady named Granny Oakham. So she's breaking the fourth wall. She's talking to the audience here through the eyes of, like, we're in the eyes of, like, a crow that's there, and she's talking to us, I believe is the idea, and she gives, like, a YouTube tutorial on witch balls. Again, never explaining what they're used for, like, the purpose of witch balls, unless I missed it somewhere, but she's like, Granny Oakham gonna teach you how to make a witch ball right now, so this is what we're gonna do, you're gonna take a rat's tail, you're going to gut a cat. You're going to take the guts. You're going to put the bones of the cat in here. You're going to put it in a pot, boil it, mash it, stick it in a stew. You're going to then trim your hair, take some of your fingernails, and then trim your pubic hair, put it all together, and you got a witch ball. Why would anyone ever want that? Like, what do you use it for? Does it have power? Like, can I use it like a Kamehameha blast? Like, what is the witch ball for? You've taught me how to make it in this cauldron, but it's fundamentally still a shit nugget. What am I doing with it? And what's crazy is it ends up playing a pretty big role at the end of this movie. Well, in general, actually, you keep seeing witch balls. So, like, they end up going to Cora Fisher's place, the witch, And Tom has a personal connection to her. They get there and they find more witch balls. So she's fucking pooping around like she got like rabbit turds, these witch balls. And Tom's like, oh, damn, she's like a full blown witch. There's like bugs and stuff. And then they find her skin suit. She's just got her whole skin lying around like it's about to be a cosplay costume. So, and Tom's like, all right, we just got to leave her there. She's out wandering around. So I was under the impression that she was just wandering around skinless, just like meat. But it turns out she was just transformed into a raccoon, and then she comes back, crawls into the skin suit's mouth, and takes shape again, but very slowly and very painfully, so her body's like breaking and shit, and she's crying out in agony. So I had to wonder, like, why did she even bother transforming if it's this painful? Just don't transform, just stay in human mode. It seems really stupid to put yourself through that agony. So, anyway, though, now they've all teamed up, Tom, Cora, Hellboy, Joe. And turns out Tom had another friend who was a witch, and I already forgot her name. I think her name was Effie. And he's going through like this flashback where he was becoming a witch. They were doing a ritual, and we learned more about the Crooked Man, who was a guy who got killed, and then he came back to collect souls to be rich again. And he gets like a penny every time he collects a soul. So he has like a pocket full of change, collects souls. Tom and Effie were doing this ritual. He saw the Crooked Man. It made him want to stop being a witch. But there was a thing Effie said where, with the cat bones he was collecting, make sure to pick out your favorite bone because it's going to be your lucky bone. For some fucking reason. And that is a very powerful object for the rest of this film. This lucky bone that he has. So he went to war, lucky bone kept him alive. He comes back, the lucky bone's basically a magic wand where he can Wingardium Leviosa shit. So he's got the lucky bone, which is really good against Effie, the witch who is still around and evil and wanting to collect Cora's soul. And the Crooked Man comes through and he wants the lucky bone. And naturally, he doesn't want to give it to him. He doesn't want to give his soul. He doesn't want Cora to die. And Hellboy and Joe are caught in the middle. Joe just wants to kind of research everything and understand everything. And Hellboy, he's just kind of like indifferent. He like seems to care to a certain extent, but like I said, he's not really a fighter. So like when the Crooked Man comes around or Effie comes around, Hellboy doesn't really do much. Like he'll pull out his gun occasionally, but he ends up not firing it, or Joe will like push his hand down to not fire it. So Hellboy's just kind of like a spectator for the most part. And when he tries to get involved, I don't think he's all that effective. So I mentioned the snake earlier, right? Well, it's kind of just like a normal sized snake. It wasn't some kind of behemoth basilisk or anything. Like, what happened is Cora gets taken by this snake. Hellboy is watching it happen. She's getting strangled, bitten, killed by the snake as Hellboy just observes. And then he decides to act. So then he like grabs the snake bites him, he gets suplexed multiple times, and then eventually kills the snake. But it ends up fundamentally like killing Hellboy to us. Well, he doesn't kill Hellboy. It transports him to a different dimension. So then he's starting to see like his mom and Cora's there explaining like the sins and stuff. Like he can't even kill a fucking snake. You know what I mean? Like that's just underwhelming. So, getting to the climax of the film though, they end up going to a church because Tom wants to bury his father. Turns out Effie turned his father into a horse. And that took a lot out of Tom's father, so he dies as a result of being a horse that was being ridden for so long. So he wants to take his father now to a church to bury him on, the sacred ground. Crooked Man shows up, Effie shows up, Crooked Man's got zombies now, so he starts raising the dead. And this is when Hellboy finally starts to do things like he shoots a few of the zombies. The Reverend then blesses a shovel and he starts hitting zombies. Hellboy hits zombies with a shovel and shit like that. Like, the Crooked Man is not very powerful. I want to make that clear. They don't make the Crooked Man seem like a real threat. They just make everyone else seem like they're not capable of actually handling anything. But I will say, these scenes, I think, are the most visually interesting scenes. Like, I would have liked to see more of this. Zombies are beyond played out. It's beyond exhausting to see them. But it is nice to see Hellboy do things, as opposed to just kind of stand around looking cool. So, and I think they do a good job of actually having him look cool when killing these zombies. And blessing a shovel and hitting things with a shovel, how is that not badass? That's some stone cold Steve Austin shit right there. Like, that's good stuff. But it's so short-lived. Eventually, Reverend and Joe go into a tunnel. Tom and Hellboy go to, like, the Crooked Man's manor after they hit the Crooked Man with a shovel. Tom's got his lucky bone. He eventually uses it to do like a fucking stupefy on Effie, the other witch working with the Crooked Man. Hellboy starts hallucinating, so he's seeing his mom again. He ends up almost shooting himself in the head, but he breaks free of the brainwashing. And then the climactic showdown between Hellboy and the Crooked Man is really lame. He kind of spins Hellboy around with, his superpowers, kind of like how Saruman had Gandalf spinning in a circle, if you remember that scene. That's kind of what the Crooked Man does to Hellboy. He just kind of spins him around, throws him around a little bit, and then he gets him, like, lying down. So the Crooked Man comes over and he spits in Hellboy's mouth, so he's, like, puking out, like, a bunch of bugs and stuff onto Hellboy's mouth, and he's like, you could have saved your mom twice now if you just gave me their souls. The other guy, like, talking about Tom and stuff. And then Tom comes up the stairs, and he's got a witch ball, and he says, this is from Cora Fisher. And he throws the witch ball, which again is a shit nugget, like a furry shit nugget, and it goes right down the pipe of the Crooked Man, who turns around and eats it. It gets caught in his throat. So I guess that's the purpose of it. Like, you're supposed to throw it at someone and hope that they choke on it. So he starts choking on the witch ball, which Hellboy then capitalizes off of. So he starts beating on the Crooked Man a little bit, and it's really kind of silly because he like throws him down the stairs, and all of the coins that he was carrying start flying out of his pockets. It's like when Sonic gets hit in a video game and he just loses all of his rings. That's what was happening to the Crooked Man. Hellboy throws him down the stairs, coins fly out. Hellboy throws him down another flight of stairs, more coins fly out. And then it ends with him just shooting him in the head and more coins fall out. It's like when you hit the jackpot at like a fucking arcade. He just starts like spilling coins out of his skull. That's most of the main stuff. I don't think the movie is nearly as bad as most people probably expect it to be, but that doesn't mean that it's a great film either. I didn't like it that much. I wasn't bored by it or anything, and I do think there are moments they did a good job with it. But overall, the horror wasn't working for me, which was a huge emphasis for the film, and Hellboy being so passive and uninvolved in everything really wasn't working for me either. And if it's all about him being a detective, why is he bad at it? Like, I don't think he or Joe really were useful in progressing the plot. It was really mainly Tom. Tom was kind of the guy who kept figuring things out and pushing it forward, and Hellboy and Joe would just get the information from Tom doing these things, really. I don't think there was anything they did necessarily that was very helpful in connecting this mystery or anything. Nor was there really a mystery to solve. It was really, the Crooked Man is here, he's bad. Effie is here, she's bad. It's a witch, Crooked Man is taking souls, we gotta stop him. There wasn't much of a mystery in the first place to solve. So I just kind of wish they'd let them do more. If they're not going to be, piecing together an elaborate puzzle, let them start beating the shit out of witches and zombies. Like, let that happen a little bit more, you know what I mean? Again, I don't think it's a horrible film, at least not to the level I think most people were expecting it. And I've decided to look into, like, what Hellboy comic fans think of it, and a lot of Hellboy comic fans really like this movie. And I'm happy to see that. Definitely wasn't for me, though. This was definitely not a film that I found a lot to love about. Again, I like the style. I like some of the decisions they made with, like, keeping it more small and localized. It really felt like a piece of a Hellboy show. Like, it felt like you were dropped into the middle of a season of Hellboy, which is cool. Like, I would love a Hellboy show. Like, have smaller scale stories like this, and you could definitely make it work. Like, I think that'd be a banger. That's kind of what it felt like, but not quite to the level I would have liked to see. It was there were good ideas here that I don't think were executed all that well. But again, is it worth watching? If you really like the comics, I think so. If you're more of a fan of the previous movies, probably not. If you like horror movies, maybe. If you're a big fan of like very generic horror. Overall though, it's not like a bad time or anything. I didn't hate watching it or anything. So yeah, that's really about it. See ya.